Good morning, everyone. As you can tell, I haven't showered yet. I'm just kind of sat around in my room. It's a bit of a mess, but I've hidden it all in the background. I hope you're all doing okay. Slightly crazy times that we're in at the moment, but yeah, fortunately this isn't a video about Corona, which is nice. Let's not make it about that. I just wanted to say big warm welcome to this, my new YouTube channel, whatever it looks like. I haven't thought of a name or anything for it yet. I'm literally just going to start recording videos and putting them up. I hope that you are all good. So I've got notes. Sorry, I'm going to be looking down at my notes a lot. Basically, I just figured we've all got a lot of time on our hands at the moment. We're all just sat around at home going slightly crazy and doing absolutely nothing, / working. I'm sure some people are working. But yeah, I'm not seeing any of you either right now, and so I thought something that might be quite cool is just for me to put up sort of daily videos each day, where we can just go through and read some of the Bible together. Now, before you switch the video off there, this isn't a Bible video of sort of for Christians, about Christians, where it's all Christianese and that kind of thing. I really want this to be a series of videos where I can just explain what I believe to you guys, and I want to make it as accessible as possible, so I'm going to read it super slowly, give you background for everything, explain everything as I'm going through. This isn't like some big attempt to convert you or anything. This is literally just, I thought it would be quite fun to just sit down and just read a little bit of the Bible every day together. Yeah, and so we're going to keep it very basic, very stripped down. I'm just going to sort of go bit by bit and explain it all. And I'll try to keep each video sort of 5-10 minutes max, so you know it's not taking up too much of your day. I would love it if you would all watch it, obviously. So yeah, so let's start off with this, the Bible itself. So as you can see, I'm reading one called the ESV. ESV stands for English Standard Version. Basically, there are a lot of different translations of the Bible. So there's the sort of, because the Bible was written ages ago, in Hebrew and in Greek and all these different, stuff. And so it has to be translated for it to get into English. Now that translation started off with King James back in the day, and since then we've had loads more. The sort of default translation is the NIV, New International Version. But yeah, I'm reading the ESV. It's pretty similar to the NIV. The reason why I've got this one in particular and why it's so big is because it's got pictures and stuff inside. So that's why I'm reading this one. It's got tons of notes that just sort of explain things to me and help me, and hopefully will help you by extension. So yeah, I would encourage you to read along on your phone or in a Bible. If you have a Bible, that's great, get out and read it. If you don't have a Bible, then message me, talk to me. I will give you a Bible. I have a bookshelf just over there, out of frame, just there, that's covered with Bibles that I want to get rid of. I've got a Bible for people who really like anime and manga, which is a bit of a weird one, but it's still, it's still a Bible. It's just got some pictures in it. I've got a nice blue sort of leather bound one. I've got one in Japanese, one in Turkish. So just, if you want a Bible, I'll give you a Bible, basically. But if you don't have one, then read along on your phones. There's a ton of apps out there called like Bible app or whatever. Just get the Bible on your phone. It's free, it's easy. I'm going to be reading the ESV translation, so if you want to get that one up, that's cool. You can pause the video now and download that app if you want to. Equally, you can just sit here and listen, because I'm going to be reading it out. And so what book are we going to be reading? As you probably know, the Bible is divided up quite a lot into different sections. We've got the Old Testament and the New Testament. Those are the big two sections. The Old Testament is what sort of all of the Jewish writings. It's got sort of Genesis and the story of how the world was created, and Moses and Noah and the Ark and all that, like those kind of classic Jewish stories. And then it's the New Testament, which is Jesus and everything that happened after Jesus. New Testament is shorter, but really punchy and really good. And so we are going to be reading from the New Testament. So the New Testament kicks off with 4 different books. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And they're called the Gospels. And each one of them is basically telling an account of Jesus' life. And so we are going to be reading from Luke. And the reason we're reading from Luke is, well, I'll just start reading from it, and then this first bit will explain that really well for me. So we are reading Luke chapter 1 verse 1. Yeah, I'm sure most of you probably know how the chapters and verses are divided up in the Bible, but essentially you have a book which is within the Bible, so Luke is a book in the Bible, and that is divided up into chapters, and those chapters are divided up into verses, so you can just snap straight to what you want to read. So today we're reading from Luke chapter 1, verses 1 all the way to 25. So yeah, I'll just kick off and read. Dedication to Theophilus. Who's Theophilus? Well, I'll explain in a sec. Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things that have been accomplished among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word have delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, that you may have certainty concerning the things you have been taught. That was one sentence, and it was like 6 lines long. Yeah, if you didn't follow that, I get it. I had to read that like 4 times to get it. So essentially, he is saying, Luke is this guy. He is a doctor. He was sort of infamous back in the day of being quite an astute, clever man. And he has this mate called Theophilus. And I'm going to have to stop the camera there because there is about to run out of memory. Oh. Who is Theophilus? We don't really know, is the question. So Luke starts off this with a dedication to Theophilus. He starts off this story about the life of Jesus with this dedication to some guy. Who is this some guy? We don't really know. There's tons of theories about him. He has got a Gentile name. So basically, there are 2 categories of people, broadly speaking, in the New Testament. There are Jews and Gentiles. So Jews are Jewish people. They're descendants of Abraham, tribe of Israel, people of the Old Testament, God's chosen people. They are a race as well as a religious group. They are, the Jewish group. And Gentiles are everything outside of that. And Theophilus is a Gentile. His name translates to loved by God, Theo and Philus, Theo, God, Philus, love. But yeah, we don't really know who he is. There are a lot of theories out there. Some people think he was a lawyer. Some people think he was a high-ranking Roman officer. We don't really know. Essentially, though, he's a Gentile. He's not Jewish. He is not familiar with all of the Jewish writings, all of the Jewish texts. And so Luke is very much addressing this book to someone who doesn't know all this stuff super well yet. Which is actually really fitting for why I've decided to read it with you guys. Luke is very much saying, he's like, look, I'm making an account for you to compile together all of the oral traditions, all of the stories people have been saying, all of the accounts. I'm going through and verifying which one's which, using my doctor's mind and all that kind of thing to put together this really succinct, neat account of what happened, who Jesus is, what did he do when he was among us. He says, an orderly account for you, that you may have the certainty concerning the things you have been taught. So he's basically saying, look, I'm going to put it all in order. I'm going to compile it all together. I'm going to make it coherent. I'm going to make sure it makes sense. I'm going to, verify these stories and create this account that you can have certainty. He wants this to be something that is certain, something that has evidence, and something that's based on reality. So that's how the book opens. But then we actually jump from that and start going into the story itself. And that's kind of the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to get into this morning. Where we have from verse 5 all the way to 25, we have the birth of John the Baptist foretold. So reading from verse 5. In the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah of the division of Abijah. You probably haven't heard of Zechariah. It's weird. You think of the Jesus account starting off with Mary and Joseph and Angel Gabriel and that kind of thing. This one's different because it starts off with this guy Zechariah, who he's just a guy. It says he is of the division of Abijah. Now, what's the division of Abijah? Basically, the Jewish people had a lot of different priests who worked in this temple, and the division of Abijah was one of those 24. that's essentially all you really need to know. And it was in the days of Herod, king of Judea. He's the Herod from the nativity story that you might recognise. And Zechariah had a wife from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord. But they had no children, because Elizabeth was barren, and both were advanced in years. So this is something you see quite often in the Bible. There are quite a lot of couples who are unable to have kids, the most notable ones being Abraham and his wife Sarah, from all the way back at the beginning of the Bible. I don't know if you know about them, but they are basically Abraham is the father of the Jewish people, pretty much. He is the first. They couldn't have kids, then God blessed them, and from then have descended all of the Jewish people. And so this is already drawing a comparison all the way to that, which is quite interesting. Now while he was serving, Zechariah was serving as a priest before God when his division was on duty, according to the custom of the priesthood, he was chosen by lot to enter the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And the whole multitude of people were praying outside at the hour of incense. And there appeared to him an angel of the Lord, standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And Zechariah was troubled when he saw him, and fear fell upon him. So this is a classic reaction of what you see in the Bible when someone meets an angel. We have this sort of westernized view that these angels are these lovely, beautiful people with these big white wings and flowing robes and things. And it's quite cuddly and quite soft, but a lot of the time in the Bible when people meet an angel, they're actually absolutely terrified. Angels kind of take different forms throughout the Bible, but a lot of them are pretty scary. But I guess one of the easiest ways of being like, oh, this angel thing that's in front of me is legit, it's from heaven, it's a proper angel, is to make it pretty scary. And so you see that quite a lot. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John." John, as in John the Baptist. Most of you probably know John the Baptist. He is the guy who comes before Jesus. He is prophesied alongside Jesus as being like there's going to be someone who's going to come and prepare the way. And John comes along and baptizes people. But that's sort of getting ahead of where we are now. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great before the Lord. And he must not drink wine or strong drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from his mother's womb. And he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go before him in this being Jesus. So John the Baptist will go before Jesus in the spirit and the power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make for the Lord a people prepared. So essentially this is the guy who's coming first time round and being like, all right, let's get you all ready, let's prepare you, let's start baptizing you, let's clear the way for this new guy to come along. And it's interesting because one of the things they say is he must not drink wine or strong drink, and so there's a passage later on where people say John the Baptist didn't drink any wine or strong drink, and yet Jesus drinks wine, which is the right way to do. And this is one of those times where God's showing look, he calls different people to different things, which is quite interesting. So then we have Zechariah's response to this. And Zechariah said to the angel, "How shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is advanced in years." And the angel answered him, "I am Gabriel." You all know the angel Gabriel. "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and bring you this good news. And behold, you will be silent and unable to speak until the day these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their time." And the people were waiting for Zechariah, and they were wondering at his delay in the temple. You can imagine, they probably all just stood around like, he's just only supposed to pop in and burn some incense, and he's been in there for a little while now. And when he came out, he was unable to speak to them, and they realised that he had seen a vision in the temple. And he kept making signs to them and remained mute. And when this time of service had ended, he went to his home. This is one of those fun times where God's like, look, I'm telling you this thing, and he's like, and then the person who God's talking to looks back at him and goes like, there's no way that can happen, and God's like, it will. And so he decides to make Zechariah mute for a little bit, just to prove his point. And so Zechariah is just walking around trying to sign what's happened, essentially, and just being like, I'm going to have a kid, but I can't say it. And you can imagine that would both be kind of quite fun and also quite annoying for him, and bless him. After these days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and for 5 months she kept herself hidden, saying, "Thus the Lord has done for me in the days when he looked on me, to take away my reproach among my people." So what does that last line mean? To take away my reproach among my people. Why has she kept herself hidden? Well, so the taking away the reproach, it wasn't particularly fashionable or cool to be barren back in those days. If you were of a certain age and you didn't have kids, that was a real mark of shame. And so there was a lot of reproach among her people for the fact that Elizabeth couldn't have kids, even though she was a good, upstanding woman. And so she really struggled with that. And then the reason for the 5 months that she kept hidden isn't entirely clear, but one of the things that people, like a lot of different scholars, have assumed about it is the fact that she probably would have had several miscarriages throughout her life. And so the reason why she kept herself hidden was that she didn't want to sort of be out there telling all the people that she was pregnant only for it to go wrong again. But that's a theory that isn't actually said in the Bible. But it's you can sort of understand to a degree why she would keep herself hidden for 5 months. Because, she's quite old and suddenly she's pregnant. She wouldn't want to be running around telling the world because, you still have that bit of worry, that bit of doubt that it may not happen, even though it's promised by God. And so that's the reading for today. That was Luke 1 to 25. I just thought there were sort of 3 sort of good takeaways from it. The first one, God uses normal people. Zechariah and Elizabeth aren't 2 names that you sort of associate with huge crazy miracles and fire coming down from heaven and floods and parting of seas and stuff like that. These are just 2 very ordinary people, but the Gospel of Luke starts out talking about these people because God used them powerfully. And the only thing that marked them out as different, it wasn't because they were wealthy, it wasn't because they were particularly talented or clever or anything like that. What marked them out was because they were good people who they were righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord. They were just good people, and that was what they tried to do. And that isn't saying they're good people naturally. That's saying they are good people because they worked to be good people. And so it's God putting out an example of like, look, these are the kind of people you should try to be. Next up, God uses broken people. This is a couple who were too old to have kids, who would have had a lot of shame on them for not having kids. And God still uses them, which is really powerful. And the third takeaway is that God works physically in the world. This isn't a story of God changing hearts and doing floaty spiritual things. This is God saying, no, you're going to have a kid. Here's a kid. And he makes that physically happen. So that's the reading for today. And I will see you all tomorrow. Much love. Mwah.